Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I hope that that this will be the first of many sort of meetings or sessions that we'll be having, very specifically holding space for everyone here in LA who has been directly impacted by the ravages of natural disaster and senseless tragedy. And those of us outside of LA, across specifically the membership of SAG-AFTRA today, but maybe tomorrow we include other unions, other siblings from other walks of life, and their friends and their colleagues and their siblings and families who witnessed or obviously were part of destruction and ultimately of loss. Trying to figure out what to say to people and what not to say. There's an actual list that I read, and we're going to have some of our friends here and our colleagues who are mental health professionals, grief counselors, and spiritual leaders and thought leaders. And I'm so excited to introduce them and get right to them. I am an actor. I am an elected leader of this union, our merry band of minstrels. I am an activist, warrior goddess, and a doer. What I am not is a mental health provider, although I have played one on TV. Dispensing with advice or counsel will be something that I leave to professionals. And boy, is there a group of humans here that I was able to assemble and asked and immediately got yes, a resounding yes from the people that you're going to meet tonight. And as I heard Rabbi Steve say today on Instagram, are you okay? Really? Add that question. And it's okay, by the way, not to be okay. It's okay for us to be able to grieve. And that's what this group of people that we have put before you are going to just try to scratch the surface with us tonight. And I really just appreciate you being here. I'm going to introduce my co-host, my brother from another mother, national board member, my co-chair on the mental health, what is it? Subcommittee? I don't know. It's a thing that we're doing because we really care about what this membership is feeling and needs and wants and desires and is afraid of. So Sean Astin has to take care of a little bit of housekeeping.
Thank you, Jolie. Thank you for all that. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, I mean, the union leadership is a volunteer situation. And so as volunteers who are in this space, there's so much communication that comes about all different kinds of needs. And one thing that we've been hearing about so much, particularly during the strike, with people on the line, members of our community that were hurting, even within the negotiating committee, whenever we talk about mental health services or mental health support or finding ways for people to feel connected to each other, not feeling alone, there's just such an overwhelming enthusiasm for generating stuff like this. So I come to this. My mother, Patty Duke, who was president of the union, was diagnosed, I think, either right before or during her presidency as someone who had a bipolar mood condition. And she spent the last 30 years of her life as a lay person speaking into the issue of destigmatizing mental illness. And in the early 2000s, I started getting invited to and now gives many speeches a year around the country, speaking as a person who grew up in a family with mental illness. But I start every one of those saying, I'm not a mental health expert. I've been exposed to so much, the kinds of clinical work that's getting done and so forth, but I am a lay person. And so, but my role here is to sort of answer the need that so many members have communicated to me. And so to see Jolie start to assemble a group of experts in this field, I just felt like, is there any way that the union can use it to make an offer directly to our members? Because there's so much that's being done in so many places. So this is a value add at this moment tonight. And the other thing is that, we're not here to proselytize anybody. No one should feel as though the union is presenting any of formal solutions to anything for people. This is, a volunteer bringing together of people that Jolie and I and others have found. But there's so much more that's available for people, and we all have to be good consumers of the healthcare that we consume, I guess is one way to put it. But let me just hit really quickly the points that the union specifically wants to be read out, and I'll do it as quickly as I can. So no recording allowed. Obviously, we're going to record for institutional purposes. The panelists, the Q&A will not be recorded, as Jolie said. The during the Q&A, it's good that the questions kind of involve topics that are relevant to everybody. If people have very specific, unique questions to them or need unique help. And I want to say this like 3 times in the marketing thing of 3s, LA@SAGAFTRA, SAGAFTRA.org, LA@SAGAFTRA.org, LA@SAGAFTRA.org. These people, this team, Serena Kung and her team, they're not just with mental health stuff, with anything related to the union or needs. They please use that web address. They man it and woman it. They monitor it very closely and are very responsive. So LA@SAGAFTRA.org. Also, if this content is being shared for educational purposes. It's not a diagnostic tool. It's not a psychotherapy group. Jolie said this session, and I think she just meant colloquially this Zoom session, but it's not a psychotherapy session in a medical sense. It's not to be used to suggest, confirm, contradict, or provide a medical diagnosis or a treatment of any kind. And again, if you need mental health support, contacting your personal medical provider or consider reaching out to the Entertainment Community Fund. Again, LA@SAGAFTRA.org. They can help you navigate some of the other resources and tools that are out there. And just the last thing to restate what Jolie said, if you are, this may be the first time that you've actually engaged in a conversation since, your experience with this natural disaster. So nobody has to disclose their personal experience. If privacy is critical, if you do feel like communicating about your story, it's emotional. That's part of why we need this thing here. So, but if it goes to the next level of intensity and you need immediate mental health support, please call 988. It's like 911, but for mental health. Mental health counselors are available 24/7, 365, and like that. So that's enough. Thank you again, Jolie, for assembling all these folks. And without further ado.
Thanks so much, Sean. Like Sean, I have family members of my own that wore their crown and scepter, their mental health challenges like a crown and scepter. And I feel directly affected by this particular thing and have always made it my jam to, instead of being swallowed up whole by it, to be in service of others. And that's my intention completely by having this call. I have a group of 3 beautiful women who I am just getting to know. And do we see Amanda on yet? Instead of reading their resumes, and I hope that you went in and did a deep dive into the panelists that are here tonight before you. And if you haven't, maybe we can put it into the chat. But I wanted to introduce to you Claire Bidwell Smith and Amanda Kloots and Angela Schellenberg, who come to this. They're best-selling authors and incredible humans who come to this space by surviving loss in their own family and their own lives, and turned it around and reinvented their lives and themselves by making this their crown and scepter and and so they all work together a lot. And so I thought that I would put these 3 beauties before you and have them sort of guide us through a little portion of the evening. We have 2 hours tonight, and we're going to try to pack it full of punch. So Amanda and Angela and Claire, take it away.
Well, I'll start. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Kloots, and it is such an honor to be here and to be with this group of people. Truly, it is. And some of them I have worked with and gotten to know, and others I've just been comforted by your words during my loss of my husband, and then living, life after. I don't know if there's not probably any protocol to this, but I thought I would just start sharing like 3 of my things that are constant reminders to me on how to keep moving forward and heal through loss and grief. Grief is loss. So this is grief. And it never ends. And healing is a process that will follow you for the rest of your life. And in a way, it's really beautiful to look at it that way. Because who doesn't want to keep growing and evolving and changing and healing all the parts in ourselves that we need to heal? The first thing I'll say is a good friend of mine told me a little tidbit that has stayed with me forever. And it's about eras. And he said to me that when I lost my husband, he said, that was your Nick era. And it will always be your Nick era. And nothing will take away from that. And you will always be able to look on that as the happiest, most wonderful time. And that 3 years that you had with your husband, and you can always reference back to it, but now you're in a new era. And you don't know what this era is going to bring you, but it's going to be full of amazing and wonderful things as well. And we have these eras in our lives. And so, if you're a Taylor Swift fan out there, we're on our Eras tour. And you're in a new era. And that's okay. And you can always have that old era of you, or, if you lost your home or your job through all of this, it's that chapter, and we're now in a new era. So that has always kind of reframed that loss for me and helped me to kind of always put it in this perfect little bubble. The second thing I'll share is I really truly believe loss teaches you how to live. And I was saying this to a friend of mine today that I was with who was lost everything, his home in the Palisades. And I told him that. I said, doesn't it though teach you how to live? And you'll continue to learn that. And he was like, Amanda, he was like, for instance, whenever we get our new home, he said, I used to care so much about furniture, and I would spend months finding the perfect chair. He goes, now I know that chair doesn't matter. He's like, it doesn't matter. Why do I care about the chair? And I was like, Ashley, I was like, what? I said, that's such a beautiful, positive way to think about it. And he was like, but that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find all the positives, because I said, because loss teaches you how to live. And he goes, yes. He's like, that's right. And then my last tidbit I'll share is that I think through all of this, and through any loss and grief, especially, everyone handles it differently. Everyone processes it differently. And we all go through our own process. And I think that we just need to remember to allow everyone grace in this chapter of our lives and going forward. In tragedy and trauma and loss, within 5 minutes, I've hysterically cried. I've had a panic attack. I've laughed out loud, and then I've been crying again. So just because you might see your friend laughing one day on a social media post or something, it doesn't mean that they weren't sobbing their eyes out 2 seconds later. Or if you haven't seen somebody who you feel like should be donating their time, you don't know if they were donating 10 hours before and then just didn't choose to post it. So I think we have to remember to take that judging wall down and really just allow grace within yourself, within our friends, within our family. When you go through things like this is unexpected. Nobody's done this before. You know what I mean? Unless you've lost your home in a fire, or, it's a lot of times these are emotions that you've never experienced before. So allow yourself grace. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Amanda. That's beautiful as always. I'm Claire Bidwell Smith. I'm a therapist specializing in grief and loss. I've written several books about grief. This is not what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I went through a lot of my own profound losses early in life that catapulted me into this field. And I'm so grateful to Jolie for holding space and Sean for holding space for all of this, and to be here with all of my colleagues who I know so well. And we've been seeing each other a lot lately on Zoom, showing up to offer grief support for everyone out there. In my work, what I really strive to do is just provide permission and space for people to be grieving. And I just really want to recognize how much grief everyone is carrying right now. Whether you lost your home and everything you own, whether you lost your school or your job or your place of work or your community, whether all of your friends and neighbors have lost their homes, whether you're watching this from the East Coast or from overseas and you're feeling so much. I spoke to a woman earlier today who lives in a different state but grew up in the Palisades, and she's mourning just the fact that her childhood home is gone and all of her memories and the schools she went to and her neighbors and loved ones. There are so many layers and so many pieces of all of this that we're all going through, and so much loss that we're all feeling. I think we're all feeling so much collective grief for Los Angeles in general, for the future, for the uncertainty that we're all holding. And I just want to recognize that this is going to be a very real grief process for everyone. No matter where you are in this and what you've lost, there will be a very real process that will unfold. We're only 2 weeks into this. And so right now you may still be feeling numb or disassociated from it. You may not have cried yet. That's okay. You may be crying every day, but if you're not feeling all of that stuff yet, often we don't always feel safe enough to grieve in the beginning. So some of you are still grappling with the loss of stability and security and the loss of your home, your community. And so you may not be quite in the deep grief yet. It's going to unfold over the coming weeks and months, and you may cycle through all kinds of different things: anger, anxiety, a lot of regret, or even positive emotions and hope and finding silver linings like Amanda talked about. There's so many different layers that will continue to kind of peel back for you. And I think, like Amanda said, really extending grace, not only to others around you and however they may be grieving, but to yourself. We can be so hard on ourselves when we're grieving and when we're in a vulnerable place. We can really bully ourselves about being stronger, having it more together. It's okay to need to get in bed at 2 p.m. right now and just close the blinds and take a minute. It's okay to feel everything that's coming up. It's okay to want to be alone, or it's okay to want to connect with people. I think showing up to spaces like this, really just feeling supported and feeling held, is very important right now. Really, again, having that compassion and taking care of yourself. I'm also thinking about how, we were all just going through our regular lives when this happened. We already all had stuff. Maybe you had just gone through a loss, or you're already carrying big losses, or you've just lost a job, or something else big has happened in your life. And now this is going on top of it. There's a lot. So really recognizing that for yourself too, and being gentle. I think that the time that this is going to take to unfold is going to be a long period of time. I think we won't even understand fully the magnitude of it for a little while. It's really still unfolding for everyone here. And so again, just extending that grace and compassion. You can look up anything about grief that you really want, and it will apply to this. This is very much grief, regardless of what people on the outside may say about what it means to lose a home. We've all lost our sense of security and stability. And when we don't have that sense of safety and home, it's really hard to just go about our regular day or feel okay in the world. So really being kind and gentle with yourself is so important. I'm going to hand it over to Angela to talk about trauma, because she's one of the best trauma therapists I know. And I think this is an incredibly traumatic event for everyone involved.
It is. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Claire and Amanda. I just want to piggyback on what the two of you said. It's just I'm so honored to be here, and just so incredibly deeply sad and grieving with you. I'm a Seattle native and just moved to Los Angeles and went through this. I live in Santa Monica, and we have fires in Seattle, but nothing like this. And I know this is unprecedented, but I come to this field because I was young. I was 11 when my mother had a nervous breakdown and was institutionalized. And then when I was 16, my father was gunned down. And by 22, my mom was gone. So I met Claire, through that same field of losing both of my parents really young. But one of the key elements that I had is so much trauma with the institutionalizing, losing my home so young. I was just, so young. And I remember the furniture going out and people taking our stuff. And so I can relate to you in the sense that if you are someone that has lost your home, it is so difficult and it's so traumatic. And I just really want to validate that for you, because it's so much deeper than just losing your home. It's losing your safety in the world. It's losing your sense of, history. Some of your histories, the photos, the pictures. I was just working with someone today that she said, I can't think myself out of a box. I'm just frozen. And that's one of the things I want to talk with you about is, when you go through a traumatic event, and trauma lives in the body, the trauma happens, but it actually lands in the body. So what happens is when that trauma is in your body, you can feel kind of frozen. Once the trauma hits you, we have 4 responses. It's sort of that fight, which is like, and if you look around and think of your friends that are maybe going through this, there's some people that go to the fight mode, which is like they're out there and they're ready to fight, and that's their trauma response. Flight, some people are just out of here, they're gone. That's their trauma response. We spend time in 2 of those. Freeze, some clients that I'm talking to are just not getting out of bed. I call it trauma taco up, and they're just tacoing and they're in bed, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do trauma. What hurts for you hurts for you. And then fawn, some people are hurting themselves, but they get a lot of in service, they help other people, and that's a trauma response. So I want to remind you that your grief is unique. I also want to say that some of the things that happen with this is there's 3 types of trauma. There's the acute trauma, and that's like sudden, which is what we live through with these fires. And this can be traumatic loss, like an accident, all sorts of things. And with that, it's a single event that's so distressing. That's the one trauma. The second one is just chronic trauma, which a lot of you, if you've lost your home, you're experiencing that too, because you have to do the paperwork and you have to do all the stuff that goes with that. And it's just layers and layers of executive functioning. And the one thing that happens in trauma is your amygdala sends off this like, danger, danger, you're not safe, and it shuts down the brain. In that front right side of the brain is your executive functioning. So a lot of times you are just like, why am I forgetting my keys? What's happening to me? I have so many clients that are like hitting their head, like, why can't I do this? And I just want to encourage you to have so much self-compassion. If you can put an umbrella over you that just says self-compassion, that is so important, because like you said, Claire, we're so hard on ourselves. But a lot of times just putting that over and being like, okay, I can do this, and thinking about like, how do you, when you look at trauma and it's in the body, I want you to think about it kind of gets stuck there. And so some of the things that I'd like to offer today also is thinking about your trauma, the acute trauma, the chronic trauma, and then there's also complex trauma. So if you already had complex C PTSD, which is prolonged over time, like maybe you grew up and you had trauma, or you grew up in a home that already had a lot of trauma, when you compile these things on, it can literally just freeze you in your tracks. It's really hard. Or you may be somebody that operates really well in trauma because you've lived it so long, and that's been part of your history. But I want to think about when you're experiencing some of these things. I just wanted to share a little bit of what you might be going through. Some of you might have survivor's guilt. You have kind of irritability. There's 4 elements that it does. It's like subjective experience, which is highly personal, what works for you. It's that loss of safety, which Claire talked about. And also it's the somatic storage, which is embodied. And then healing is going to require integration. But I also want to be careful of running to a positive narrative, because it just sucks. Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be okay and not be okay. This just really sucks. There's no other way to say it. It's just really hard, and it's sad, and there's so many layers to it. So I wanted to touch on that I don't want to jump to the toxic positivity, even though there will be time for that. I just want to allow you the space to just really feel that, because it's hard, and your neighbors and your community, and you have so many compound losses on this. So I think about too, and then I'll kind of end with this, but I'm thinking about, the survivor's guilt that you might have, irritability, hypervigilance. Like, the nervous system is so important, because your nervous system and emotion regulation. Some of us didn't learn emotion regulation growing up. And let me explain what emotion regulation is. It's feeling the breadth of all of your emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's not just calming down. So if that's something that you didn't learn coming of age, it's really hard in trauma to learn how to regulate your nervous system. Because right now, if you think of a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no distress at all and 10 being the highest, a lot of you are living at that 7 to 10. What we want in nervous system regulation is for you to be around a 3. Now, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different things. One of the things you can do is tap like this. If you're sitting here right here and you do the butterfly tap, that's something that you could do. This is called bilateral stimulation. So it really kind of helps calm the nervous system and bring that down. You can wiggle your toes. That's another way to kind of stay in your body. Trauma disconnects us from our body. It's like your head and your body are two different entities. And so when you're living with that trauma, it landed in your body. And so we have to move that trauma through your body. And we can do that through tapping. I have a little thing here, the EMDR light bar that I wanted to show you. And this is something that we do just in trauma. This is the EMDR light bar. And when I have a client, like the clients I worked with today, I come in, maybe they're super overwhelmed because the trauma's over and they're just scared. I'm so afraid. I want to live in a tower. I'm so afraid. And so what we do is we bring up the distressing memory and we use this bar, which is light. It's a light bar that does bilateral stimulation. And some of you know EMDR, but this is called EMD. And this is important, you guys, if you were living with that trauma, to do the EMD with bilateral stimulation, and it brings down the charge. You're just trying to regulate your nervous system. That is your only goal. Like if you can try to figure out, if I'm feeling distressed, what can I do in this moment? Get in the shower. The shower is amazing. It activates the dive response to trauma. So getting in the shower, tapping. Number one thing, if you're going to have a panic attack, is grounding. I always say, you're standing like this and you kind of almost pretend you have roots going out of your feet into the earth, and you're going to cinch them up and you're going to ground first. And then you want to go to breath, and then breathing by taking a deep breath in, holding like box breathing, and then releasing. So think about this first, grounding first and then breath. And also anything that you can do with bilateral stimulation, and sometimes even shaking, like shake your arms, move your body, have a dance party, even though you don't feel like dancing, go for a walk, anything that you can do. Another great trick that I like is putting your legs up on the wall. When you feel just that panicky feeling, put your legs up on the wall, and then the blood goes, by having your legs up on the wall, it just helps your body regulate a little bit more. So these are just some tips and tools that I'm thinking about, to kind of add, because right now, when you're living with that trauma, you have to move it out of your body. If you do not do that, what happens is we end up drinking more, or we end up, because we're trying to soothe ourselves is what we're trying to do. It's so distressing. And so we drink more, or we eat more, or we go do, we're trying to just find a way to cope. So I would encourage you any way you can to think about 0 to 10, where am I in this moment? And what do I need to be okay? Have I fed myself? Have I drank water? What do I need to do to take care of my emotional system here? How do I regulate my emotions? And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is you have to feel it to heal it. Like you're going to feel this, but now's not the time. Now we're in triage mode right now. And so you're not doing therapy right now. I don't do therapy with people that come to me. We do triage. It's like, where are you? What are you holding because of this trauma? For a lot of times it's, I'm not safe. A lot of times it's, I should have done something. There's so many things that we hold when that trauma lands in our body. And so we try to reduce that a little bit so that we get it out of the nervous system. And then you're able to sort of breathe a little bit, and you're not carrying that trauma. So I just wanted to give you a few tips like that, and I'll add in, but thank you so much for having me. And yeah,
thank you so much. I want to say, we all, like I said in the very beginning, we all are directly affected. If you did not lose your home, it's okay to still be in this feeling of grief and trauma. Like we all collectively, this is where we are. I wasn't running from literal flames, although I kind of was. They were at my back door. I had, 4 fires directly surrounding where I live. I've just given you my address. And then I got a notification that I might need to evacuate my mother, who is in assisted living with 400 people that are living in gurneys or beds or, wheelchairs. And I was like, what does that look like? So my nervous system was super affected. I'm not putting myself above anybody else. I appreciate you ladies so much. We are talking directly to the membership who may not have lost everything, which is so tragic and dramatic, but may have lost pieces of themselves in their friendships and in their family and in their looking back at their childhood homes, which both of the childhood homes I lived in Malibu, when Malibu didn't have tennis courts on the beach. My mom, Connie Stevens, bought the house next door to Debbie Reynolds. It was very weird and meta. It was salty and sandy and a very strange time in the world. Both of those houses burned down. It's weird. I thank you so much. I want you to stay around if you can for questions specifically directed at you because you're magic humans. And I want to thank you and then possibly move to my friend David Kessler, whose email address is david@grief.com. So I think this man fits the bill. He resembles that remark. He has sat with many of our friends and colleagues who are waiting to transition to the other, the different, the better, whatever it is, that place that we go when we go. And I respect him so much for that. And he has a prior commitment, and I just wanted to get him in to speak if we could right now. And then if you ladies can stay around, I'm sure that people have direct questions. And I know you have little children that you need to get to, which is like really important. And I want to talk about how do we talk to our kids? Because I have 5 of them from millennium to alpha. There's a big spread in there, and they've endured so much. So I do want to talk a little bit about that. So if you could stick around, but I would love that if David Kessler could come on now, if that's okay.
I'm here. Hi there. Thank you so much. First of all, Sean and Jolie, thank you for this invitation, and I'm grateful to SAG and AFTRA. Sean, I had the pleasure of meeting your mom many times, and she was always so authentic, which is like such an amazing quality. So I'm grateful to be here today. I am, as mentioned, a grief specialist, and I just want to acknowledge Amanda and Claire and Angela, tough acts to follow. I learn something every time I listen to them. They're amazing folks at what they do. I'm a grief specialist, and I came into this through loss, like many of them did. I actually lost our home when I was 9 years old through a natural disaster. It was not a fire, but we did lose our home. And it is such a challenging loss. And I think many times we think death is grief. And there's so many types of grief. It's actually an inadequate word that it covers so many types of experiences we have. And I think about grief is a change we didn't want. It's always a change we didn't want. And it's always the death of something. There's obviously the death of a person, but a breakup is the death of a relationship. A divorce is the death of a marriage. Job loss is the death of a job. And certainly home loss is the death of that place that was your safe place. And for all of us, Los Angeles is our home too. It is our safe place, and it's been disrupted. And I am so honored to be here talking to you. I joined SAG and AFTRA decades ago when I had a line in a movie and a line on Three's Company, and I thought it was the beginning of my career, and it turned out to be the end. I ended up going a different way, as you can see, but I'm always so grateful to all you do for folks who are here in Los Angeles and around the world, really living their dream and the artistry that folks bring to this. So I find it interesting running and talking to people in LA. And one of the things I hear is I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress. And I always go, it's not post. It's not post. We're like in it. This isn't post yet. We haven't even gotten to the post yet. So to really understand, and it is grief and it is trauma. So I think of this as traumatic grief. That's really in the air that we're feeling. And as so many people have pointed out, there is such a spectrum of what people are feeling here, from those who have had to say goodbye to their house and their house was gone. a lot of people said goodbye to their home thinking it was the last time when they had to evacuate, which brings all the trauma of that goodbye to that moment, even though maybe they came back and their house was spared. We also here in Los Angeles, I got an evacuation notice, and I got to tell you, I talk about this all the time, and then I suddenly experienced it. I literally got 3 friends evacuated, talked them out of their house. One friend got to my house. We were there. And all of a sudden, a couple hours later, there was a fire 4 blocks away. Another fire started. And my friend said to me, and this is the moment that gets me, my friend said, okay, you've been helping everyone else. It's time to pack your own bags. How many of us know how to help more than we know how to pack our own bags? And I have to tell you, the thing I talk about all the time is grief brain. And I had it. Suddenly, I was in this survival mode, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose my house again in this lifetime? And as I walked around, I couldn't think of what to pack. I literally couldn't think. I mean, I'm like, pictures, I mean, it was just so hard. And I think so many people experience that. And when we go into survival mode, we're using a different part of our brain, and so much goes offline then. You literally can't think. One person on my team years ago worked in Laguna Beach, and she worked for a store after they had a fire down there. And she said in the store, they gave a list for everyone who was in the fire of when they come in, make sure they get a pair of tennis shoes, a pair of dress shoes, because you can't think. You literally don't know what you need in those moments. And I also think about, for people in this industry, you understand the world in a different way. Like, this is a cup, but if you're an actor, you know it's not just a prop. You know this is filled with memories. This is connected to your life. And to lose the cup feels like you lose a connection to yourself. You're a prop person, your lights, I mean, all the things that everyone here does. You are in such an empathetic profession. You are feeling this deeply. It's just who you are. You know, the joke about you've got all the feelings, right? It's that you are really going through this too. In '94, I lived here after the Northridge earthquake. And about a week later, tons of aftershocks. I went to a movie theater, was watching a movie. And during the movie, an aftershock hit. And in the movie theater, there were 2 types of people. One that, like, hair catches on fire. Oh my gosh, where's the exit? Where's the exit? Running in circles. The other group is, shut up and sit down. Nothing's happened to you. Just watch the movie. And I think we're sort of living that in LA, that so many people are deeply affected just with the collective grief and loss in the air. And there's other people going, you didn't lose your house. It's all fine. Calm down. Now, a lot of us become hyper vigilant, and our regulatory systems really go into high gear. Some of us become minimizers, and we want to minimize everything. Both of them often come from old wounds. So it's interesting to know we're in this stew, living in all of that right now. For those of you who are far away, I always talk about the 3s. Call your friends in 3 days, call them in 3 weeks, call them in 3 months. It's not just this week. It's not just this month. To keep that in mind. And many of you know that I had the honor of working with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did the stages of grief and their denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And there's a lot of illusions and myths about them. the first thing she would have told me to say to all of you is they're not linear. Grief is messy. You can't neaten it up. And the other thing I wrote in my last work was about finding meaning. And I want to, as much as I'm a big believer in finding meaning, and Amanda talked about it in so many ways very eloquently, also, we have to find it in our own time, not our friends' times, which means we don't want to bright side anyone and go, well, there's a bright side and look at this and no one died and you're going to really cherish life more, whatever it is. Don't bright side people. Here's what we need to give folks right now. Grief must be witnessed. We need our grief witnessed. We need to see our pain in the eyes of another. So I'm so honored that you invited me here, and thank you all. I'm just honored to be among this group of folks. So thank you.
Thank you so much, David. One of the first things that I said to you, and I think many of you, whoever would listen to me, was that I was given the opportunity to evacuate twice in the past couple of weeks. And once was not literally running from flames, like I've said, but running from that the fire was in my backyard-ish, but also I had no power and there was no sense in staying. I have lots of animals. I had a child recovering from surgery and we just took off. But the second time when I came back, I had the opportunity to pack up a U-Haul, which was an interesting thing because I have this abnormal attachment, as I have always known, but I found even more spotlit, was I have an abnormal attachment to things. And I said to you, like, that is that okay? Is that not okay? It doesn't matter. It is what it is. I come from a family where I want those things. I want my museum and my altars and my sanctuaries built to where I come from. And you reminded me that those things, I know who gave me everything. I know where it comes from. It means that I have a memory. And I really appreciated you saying that. I also realized that I didn't need it all. I need some of it, but I don't need it all. And I think that people need to realize that. And I appreciate you for saying that because it really infused how I packed up my U-Haul. So I adore you and appreciate you so much. And if you can stay around, yay. And I know you
stay as long as I can.
Okay.
Let me just say, David, everything you said directly connected with my experience on this recent fire disaster. Everything you said was like, oh, yep. So I really appreciate that we're being given such interesting strategies and framings and ways to navigate it too. But I was sort of hoping that you would say all those things. So thank you.
And we didn't even mention the false alarms that some of us got. Like there's those false notifications.
I just got one right now. And then it's the phrase forward progress of the fire has been stopped and no active flames are phrases that are triggering, even though they represent the end of something. There's a small fire in Simi Valley just now. So like while you're
kept that watch duty app on all night long and it rang and it rang and it rang.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, so much. And we appreciate you. So Sean, will you introduce our next trio?
So Jodi Long has been an incredible asset for the mental health of our local. Our local, like a lot of unions, had a lot of internecine emotional turmoil. And when Jodi got to assumed her role as the president, she came in and very quickly helped us kind of calibrate our breathing with each other and just introduced concepts that might have not been considered appropriate for that setting. And then you realize that, like, how can you exist without doing that? So Jodi's here. And then also Tramaine EL-Amin, who I just met, and I just can't believe, Tramaine, that your particular life's work is that we just met, and we're having this, hastily put together event, and that you're able to speak about the training that you do with people during crisis times. And I'll let, I think both of you guys can probably just explain a little bit about your own bios when you're talking, because you'll do it better than I am. But thank you both, and maybe Jodi, since it's a union thing, you should go first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all attending, especially our esteemed guests who are speaking to us on this grief issue. And to Jolie and to Sean and this, the health subcommittee, whatever it's called in Los Angeles. But, you know, you picked up these reins, and I'm so grateful to you. I also want to thank our staff who is facilitating this, a very big Zoom. And this would not have happened without your help. So that's what I'm saying. I just, you know, I'm a survivor, not just of Northridge quake when I was here, but also a survivor of 9/11. And I wasn't there that day. I was in Los Angeles rehearsing a play at the Taper. And it took me here for 8 months doing other things, and I didn't get back. But I saw the collective effects of that terrible day. And, you know, it's energetic. Sorry, Michelle Hurd just texted me. It's energetic. And that's what we feel, whether we're there or not. We know the city, we know the people, we know so many people that have been affected. And that's the thing that Angela said, that for me, I'm a yogi, that's what I do. And in Kundalini yoga, it's about regulating our nervous system so we don't blow out, right? And Angela said, you know, take a shower. I would also say, wash your hair, you know, wash that thing out of your hair and calm down, because that's, you can operate from a neutral point of view as opposed to everything's great, going to that extreme, and everything is terrible, and how am I going to deal with this? And you're in fight and flight or whatever it is. Well, however you're feeling it, it doesn't matter, right? But you're off balance. So it's coming back to be balanced, I find, that is always so helpful, even when you're grieving. And we all have our own grief, right? I know I got sick because it happened the day of the fires or the next day, and I got triggered by something that threw me into, you know, oh my God. And I was like, ah. And then here I am. I haven't been sick in 25 years, except for the COVID that I had, right? So that's how it affects us. And sometimes you take it by surprise and you're going to go off, and there it is. But if we can maintain our nervous system, that's an important thing. And I think grace is, and self-compassion. It's one thing to have compassion for other people, but sometimes you have to have more compassion for yourself as you're going through it. Not to their exclusion, but there is that. So I just want to say one other thing. And David, you said something, and I have a question about that. You said grief needs to be seen in the eyes of the other. Could you explain that more for me? Because I was like, oh, that's so interesting. What does that mean?
Sure, I'm happy to. You know, one of the things is that we have what's called mirroring neurons. And we often think about them in babies, that babies need to mirror their mom and moms need to smile at each other. We have to remember we're all former babies. And we've grown up, and we still need to know we're not alone. And think about, in war, the most horrific thing we do to someone is we isolate them. And at the same time, after killing them, we isolate them. What we can do to ourselves is isolate ourselves. And it's the worst thing. And study after study is showing in grief and trauma, those things were done to us, sometimes by people or events or the world, and we need connections with others to help them heal. We need others to heal.
Ah, Beautiful. Thank you so much for saying that. So I'm going to hand it back, but I'm so grateful that you're all here, our members, all our guests, and thank you so much. I'm going to hand it to Tramaine.
Jodi and Yogi are sort of similar in the in semantically, but so thank you, Yogi, Jodi. All right, Tramaine. Yeah, thank you so much. And can you just share with everybody what you do? Because it's, what I've known is in trying to process all the information that's happening in the news and wherever we go to get it, and people who need help and people who are trying to help. And, there's, trying to categorize ourselves of what our relationship is to what's happening and everything else. It's so nice and reassuring to know that there are, people doing the kind of thing you're doing right now. But they might not even realize that it exists as a profession or as a thing. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing about what you do.
Absolutely, Sean, and good evening, everyone. First of all, I just want to say I'm a human. I'm a human being, and we have that shared experience. And I'm just so grateful that I get to be human with all of you. I'm grateful that everyone who's kind of shown up today has shown up as their full selves. And, Sean, when I categorize what I get to do, I get to show people how to just be human and just connect with other people, and do that through a framework that allows us to know. I don't know about you all, but I don't know what to say sometimes. I don't know how to approach when someone is grieving. All of the wonderful, I want to add to this wonderful information that's been shared by Jolie and Sean, but also the things that Amanda and Claire and Angela and David shared so far are just such rich information. And yet I don't know how to package that and not have it come out my mouth in a way that does further harm to someone when I'm concerned about them. And I know my friends, my family, I think all of us in this room have been touched by not only mental health challenges or someone we know or love or us ourselves, but also those that are experiencing grief is something that's a shared experience as a human being. And so what I get to do is lead a program. It kind of answers that question that Jolie, that you asked earlier. What do you do when the smoke clears? And my answer is you do what you can and what you feel equipped to do and what you feel comfortable doing. And I think part of that is having a way to support others, but also support ourselves in a way that's accessible and not intimidating, in a way that helps us know how to say things that might be supportive and to leave room for those conversations, and make awkward conversations more comfortable. And so that's what I do. That's what I get to do. It's a program called Mental Health First Aid. And it's what it is what it sounds like. It's how do we support someone when there's a crisis that's happening? What do we say? What resources do we provide? How do we not step into that space that David talked about earlier, where one of my colleagues like to say, don't should on people. You should do this and you should do that. And, how do we make that balance, right? Of how do we create supportive space, but not infringe what our experience has been? Because our grief is unique and a shared experience at the same time. And so for some of us, that might look like supporting others by giving or jumping and diving into work. And that's okay. For some of us, it may be shutting everything down and kind of walking away from everything for a while and taking a break and taking a step back when we can. For some of us, we have little humans at home who are also processing grief and trying to figure out how can I navigate all that's here and in all these experiences. And they know what's happening. Even if we don't explain it or talk to them about it, they're going to pick up on those things. So we figure out a way to kind of support people. And we've done that for 4 million people in the United States. We've trained them to understand how do you recognize when someone's in distress? How do you support them? What do you do? And we teach a 5-step mnemonic that helps us remember, like CPR and first aid, the ABCs of CPR. We do the same thing. It's called ALGE, and we assess for what's going on. I think earlier today, someone mentioned need to know what you're dealing with. You need to know and check into what's going on with you, right? So assess, am I even ready for a conversation with someone else? Am I in a good place to have that dialogue? Am I in a good place to kind of be supportive to someone else? I think the other thing is listening non-judgmentally. And I always joke that I thought I was a great listener, and then I got married to my partner, and it's like I could use some work, But don't look at me like that. Don't judge me, because we all think we're better than we are. But listening non-judgmentally and suspending that judgment, it really applies in this grief situation, no matter what that grieving experience is, whether it's the wildfires or the loss of someone close to us, or the loss of a shared, what I think, David, you said it's a change we didn't want. And so it's like, how do you deal with that loss? How do you deal with that? I think that listening non-judgmentally to others also implies that listening to someone's pain does impact us. Listening to someone's loss, maybe we didn't lose everything. The guilt that comes from not having lost everything. What does that look like as we listen to someone's pain? How do we not ignore how we're experiencing those things? And so that's the L of algae. The third thing we do is we give reassurance and information. And I want to stress this. It is not saying everything's going to be okay. We teach people actually to do the opposite of that, because we don't know. I mean, listen, if you do know, please, I'll send you a little message in the chat. Give me the lottery number for next week's lottery. If you know how to tell the future, please let me know, because I know I can't say that everything will be fine. Even though we think that is a great thing to say, we teach why that's not maybe the best phrasing to use. And then we teach people how to encourage help in two ways. Either you encourage professional help when needed, and how to recognize those warning signs that someone is in distress, in crisis, or even if they're just there's a change that's going on for them. And then how do you encourage self-help and other support strategies? And so we teach those 5 things as a mechanism to demonstrate some control.
What's the mnemonic?
Algae. It's ALGEE. So each letter stands for a different part of the process. The program started in Australia. It's global. There's 8 million people around the world who've taken the program. And our mascot is a little koala. So it helps us remember the algae, the A, the L, the G, the E, the E. And so I say that to say, even if you never take the course, there's a way that you can identify what safety is for someone else, but also what safety is for you. So I want to leave you with 3 things. David, we are in sync, I'm telling you, with these 3 things. These 3 things that I thought, might be a good way for us to frame how we are supported. So being good to you is first, because a colleague of mine also says, we often use this phrase, you can't pour out of an empty cup, but the folks on this call, I'm sure, are the helpers for others. And so you still keep pouring. You keep pouring. And not only is it empty, but now you're at a deficit, right? And so it's important for us to think about, how do we make sure that we have enough to then give to others? And I think that's incredibly important for young people. So before we support others, we support ourselves. That means being okay can take many forms, and figuring out what okay is for this moment. It may be different tomorrow. You might need to find a different set of solutions and coping skills and strategies moment to moment. But trying new things to be good to you is of critical importance. I always say an equation I like to keep in my head is self-care. Self-preservation is greater than self-care. Right? Self-preservation is greater than self-care. In my mind, it works as an equation, because a lot of times we think of self-care as it's become this thing, right? This trendy way of being. But it is also saying no to the right things and figuring out what that might mean for you. The second thing I'll say very quickly is being good to others includes young people. And I'm focusing on young people because I think a lot of times we have young people we know, love in our lives, even if we aren't necessarily their caregivers. But the National Child Traumatic Stress Network has a great resource, and I'm happy to share that. It gives a list of opportunities for us to support young people, especially when there's been some kind of traumatic event, whether that's a wildfire or a loss. But it's really important to make sure that you determine whether or not you're going to support that young person by giving them what pieces of the story, thinking through that, what information are you sharing, and then offering them choices about how they take that information in. I think a lot of times we don't think of young people having that autonomy to really already understand much more than we're sharing with them. And so I think it's important to be extra patient with them in that time as well. And knowing that you don't have to have all the answers. We don't know why bad things happen to good people. We don't know why. We don't have all the answers to how and why these things happen, but making sure that dialogue is open for young people is critically important, and it can help us to build that trust. The last B, I will say, is being in community. And that's been the shared sentiment from so many others. But what I find is we often think of healing and we think of mental health and we think of therapy, but it's so much more. And so if we think about healing opportunities, whether that's sharing rituals like we're in right now, sharing with each other, we can think about, individualistic things as well in terms of group sound baths or yoga was mentioned earlier. Yes, those things, but also that witness that was talked about. And there might be things that are grieving practices that you can borrow from other cultures or other support strategies that others have. Have the dialogue about how to grieve well and how to grieve in community. I think a lot of times we just shy away from the conversation. And so I'm so grateful to just be here in community with you. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to dialogue about ways that we can build a skill around grieving, but build a skill also around how we support ourselves and each other when it comes to mental health challenges, substance use challenges, or any challenge that we face. Because I really, truly believe that with us being in community and us withstanding, we can do that with each other. We're only going to do that. We're only going to withstand with each other. So thank you for the opportunity to connect with you today.
Tramaine, thank you. What a blessing to have you present and sharing that was a skill building with regard to mental health considerations. Just such a cool way to think. I hope that you're able to stay around too. So afterwards, I'm sure that our members may have questions. So if you can't, I understand. But just that was awesome. Thank you, Jodi.
And Tramaine, thank you so much. I just wanted to say it out loud in front of God and everyone, whoever you look up to, out to, inward to, that what happened in Los Angeles didn't happen to movie stars and residents of the Palisades and Malibu area. It happened to the community of Altadena, which was started by a freed slave, and who started a community of marginalized people where they were able to buy homes and property and community and integrate into schools. And it was a very important part of Los Angeles that has been wiped off the face of the earth. And it continues to be a place of marginalized and minority people. And I just want to make sure that we all, keep in our hearts, the area that isn't the Palisades in Malibu. I just wanted to make that heard. Thank you, Tramaine, so much. And everybody who's here, so much. Rabbi Steve, I needs no introduction. I don't know if that's a way to introduce you. The Wilshire Boulevard Temple leader, the master of all things, and our beautiful Marianne Williamson, who has just signed on. I would love to kick to you.
Jodi, thank you for making this happen. Someone needed to do it, and you were the someone, so thank you.
Oh my God, I so hate to interrupt you, Rabbi. Your sound is bad, so I just want to make sure that everybody is able to hear you. I apologize for interrupting your flow. Um,
Marianne, how about if we kick it to you and then
Okay,
sign off
okay.
back and try to add
Perfect.
a little more to this discussion. I'm gonna
Perfect.
So I'd like to talk about all of this in the context of spirituality. The Course in Miracles says religion and spirit and psychotherapy at their peak are the same thing. So everything is about the healing of the mind. And as we heal the mind, we heal the heart. I think that there are times in life when full tilt catastrophe occurs. And the fires in Los Angeles are full tilt catastrophe. The only thing more catastrophic would be those who actually lost their lives. But minus that, the enormity of this event is more enormous than the lives we're used to living. And when something this catastrophic occurs, because it's so much outside the range of normal experience, we tend to want to push it away, hold it at arm's length. Couldn't even if you wanted to. So there's something here about our having an agreement to be okay with the fact that it is this enormous. This isn't just what happened the day of the fire. It isn't just what happened if you lost your house. It's what happened that you don't have any clothes, that you don't have any of your things. You won't live near your friends anymore because the friends aren't around. What do we tell the children? It's such a multi-layered, catastrophic event. And we start with making it okay to admit to ourselves, yeah, it is that bad. And then the second thing you have is it is for everybody else too. And we are in this catastrophe together. You know, one of the things I haven't liked about what's going on in popular culture over the last couple of years, everything's a trauma. We've cheapened the word. This is a trauma. And it's a multi-layered trauma, a wave of new trauma almost every day. Cry it out. Scream it out. Be like Greek women at a funeral. Now I want to talk about the spiritual aspect of it. As big as this is, God is bigger. As big as this is, the first line in the Course in Miracles, there is no order of difficulty in miracles. Think how big the ocean is. No matter how big a hole is in the ocean, it could be as big as the area of Pacific Palisades, the ocean would fill it up. So it takes you to a place of allowing the enormity of your own pain, your own suffering, your own fear, your own trauma, not trying to hold it at bay. And every day your subconscious is going to bring you as much as it can bring you today, just holding the context, God is even bigger. Now, I've lived most of my adult life in LA. There's something about LA. It is the place of the light. It is the place of the creativity. And it is the place which has before taken the hit. And I think that there's something here about if your soul is called to even live there, this is some collective something. It's like, it's even related to the inauguration. Something's burning down. And that you are living in the middle of it, and you're taking the hit as a human being. And as painful as this is, that's how much potential you have within you. There is, sometimes I'll go through an experience and I'll think, my goal is to be the Marianne who could handle this with grace. I want to be her. Think of who that version of you that, yeah, I went through that and I alchemized it. I more than survived it. I was ultimately not a victim, but a victor. I viscerally learned things. I became someone. You will not be the same person on the other side of this. You'll either be someone who shrinks because of it, or you'll be someone who expands because of it. And only you can make that decision. And I've lived in LA enough years to know LA is going to expand. You're in a place of extraordinary possibility. And everything, that we go to yoga, we go to acting classes, all the stuff that we all do, well, this is where the rubber meets the road. So as we hold this within a religious or spiritual context, God is, my friend Mary Morrissey says, there is no spot where God is not. He is with us here. He is with us here. Think how big God is. And the possibility that I'm going to become a person that can rise above even this, and then think what you will be able to do for the world. That's always got to be your prayer. May even this make me a better person. And I think suffering gives us X-ray vision into the suffering of other people. There'll come a time, it's like people say, I was there for Woodstock. There'll be a time you'll find yourself saying, I was in LA for the fires. It's like something that you went through, just like when AIDS hit Washington, it hit LA. Those of us who were there, we went through a war together, and we'll never forget it. And we were informed by it. There's a mark on our forehead because of it. There'll be a mark on your forehead too. And I know it's not easy, and the beauty of that is that you have one another. But don't try to recoil. Expand into it. And if that means that on a given day you scream, then you scream. That you cry, and just get up and be there for somebody else who's having a really hard time that night. The layers of trauma are so, so huge. But there's the crucifixion, then there's the resurrection. There's slavery in Egypt, and then there is the entrance to the promised land. It's not over. It's never over until God's light has arrived. And God's answer to every form of death is greater life. And it can start with just that thought, even when that's not how we feel. To even hold that thought, God is bigger than this. God is bigger than this. And God's greatest gift, this is what's so incredible. You know how powerful God is, more powerful than that fire, is what he's going to do inside of each of you. And the people that you're going to be because of this. And then in ways that we don't know yet. It's a lesson for America. There's so much stuff that I've already thought of. You've probably thought of much more than I have because you're there. This is really big. And this will be a defining lesson in your life, the life of that city, and I think the life of this country, whether it's a commitment to climate change, or whether it's a commitment to whatever it is, or just what aspect of your personality burns away because of this. I mean, the word wake-up call doesn't even begin to cover it. So despite how hard it is, try, if even for a moment each day, to rejoice in how great God is. That he is here even now. We're not dead. Thank God not as many people died as it could have even been more catastrophic. And make yourself available to light, resurrection, promised land, whatever words work for you. God, use me. May I become a better person because of this. May I become a bigger person because of this. May I become a stronger person because of this. And I promise you, the day will come. I just want to finish by saying one thing. I went through a tragedy in my life many, many years ago. And my friend, Andrea, said to me something I've never forgotten. At the time when she said it, I thought, what is she talking about? She looked at me and she said, one day you will look back at this and know that this was a very good year. And you know what? That was the year something popped open for me from that experience. And sometimes it's heartbreak that does that. For a community, for a country, and for an individual, you're ground zero. Take it from here.
Rabbi Steve,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it to you.
No,
And
I
oh
got
my
it.
God, like
I
we
got
are
it.
so
Just-
blessed to have this group of humans in front of us. It is like beyond, beyond, beyond. But I would love for
Okay.
Steve later.
I hope my audio is better. Is it better?
It's better.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
perfect now.
See, Marianne was right. You know, when you were speaking, Marianne, I thought about a friend of mine who had cancer 3 different times, 3 different cancers, 3 different times. And the third time when he was dying, I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, you know, this much character I don't need. It's like, you know, we sometimes find ourselves in character building experiences, and we would rather not have that much character, but we don't have a choice here. So let me quickly take a look with all of us at what the ancients might tell us to do. The ancients who, as I said before, lived through horrible, horrible trauma as a regular part of life. They really had no reason not to expect to die by the time they were in their mid-30s. So they knew a lot. We know more facts. They knew more truths. And so let's look at some of those truths. There's a prayer that we recite on the High Holy Days that talks about all the different ways we might die and all of the uncertainty of every single human being's future. Who by water, this, by the way, Leonard Cohen's famous Who by Fire came from this prayer. Who by water, who by fire, who by stoning, who will be rich, who will be poor, who will wander, who will be driven, all these uncertainties. And then the last line is what I want to teach a little bit about. The last line gives us 3 antidotes or ways of managing that uncertainty and managing these the realities of something so big only God could be bigger. And because when it happens to you, it's an enormous eclipse. You know, your thumb can blot out the sun. It doesn't mean your thumb is more powerful than the sun, but in the right position at the right time, it can blot out everything. And so this is that kind of eclipse. There's so much I want to say, but let's go to that like tripartite formula. First, it says, if you're facing these kinds of circumstances, the first thing you lean into is, I'll use the Hebrew word teshuva, which means repentance, but what it really means is tending to your relationships. Double down on your relationships. Lean on the people you love and you know love you. And there's a beautiful line in the Talmud that says, the prisoner cannot free himself. That's a very powerful idea. We have to reach out if we can. And here's the beautiful part. You will find when you reach out, there are people who will reach to you and help lift you from your suffering. They're there. And this is kind of a facile way of putting it, but the people who mind that you reach out, they don't matter. The people who matter when you reach out, they don't mind. People are going to disappoint you. They don't matter. Okay? And the people who matter, they don't mind that you need them. So reach out. That's the first of the 3. The second is tefillah, which is the Hebrew word for prayer. The English word for prayer comes from the Latin precari, which means to beg. This is antithetical to how I understand prayer. The Hebrew word for prayer comes from the root word to look inward, to examine ourselves. The rabbis say when you're visited by pain, examine your life. I think this is part of what Marianne was saying. This is an opportunity to examine our lives. But really what we're talking about with this idea of prayer by internal examination is the second thing we can do right now is pay attention to our spiritual lives, whatever that means to you. Pay attention to our spiritual lives. Nature can be frightening. Go out, go for a hike, go for a walk. Let's remind ourselves that nature isn't always fearsome, that it's beautiful. Today was a beautiful day. I walked a canyon today, beautiful, and it reminded me and gave me faith again in the reality that the bottom has not fallen out of the world. Now, the third thing, so we've got reach out, lean into your relationships, tend to your spiritual life. The third thing, it's tzedakah, which means helping other people. No matter how difficult our circumstances may be, our burden is lightened by giving to others. And we all have the ability to do something for someone else. I know Jodi's a Buddhist, so I'm gonna share one of my favorite Buddhist sayings with everyone here. I'm often overwhelmed by the enormity of problems, and I lean on this a lot. The saying is, tend the part of the garden you can reach. We can all reach someone. We all have people within our orbit who need us and who we can help. And it will lighten our own burden by helping others. You really do receive by giving. Now, I also think it's important not to glorify suffering. This isn't worth it. You're right, Marianne is right. We come out of this with something, but that doesn't mean it was worth what we lost. It wasn't, and we don't need to justify or counterbalance that loss. It is a loss. It's heavy, it's dark, it's frightening. We all had our sense of invulnerability ripped away from us, just like COVID. That's why it felt so much like COVID, even though it's different. And I think sitting with it is important. There are 3 stages. There's survival, there's healing, and there's growth. We all know who has and who has not survived, and we've met our Maslowian hierarchy of needs, right? Now, I think we're in the healing phase or the rehab phase. For athletes, it's rest, rehab, run. I think we're entering into rehab now. And how do we do that? Show up. Show up for other people. Just show up. You don't have to know what to say. You don't have to know what to do. You just have to walk in the door. After 40 years of being a rabbi, when I'm standing on a front doorstep to meet with a family after a loss, when I'm standing in the hallway of a hospital, I don't know what I'm going to say when I walk in that door. I just know I have to walk in that door and be myself. This is also, I think, a really helpful point. When you show up for others, don't show up as some mediocre actor putting on some kabuki-like sad face. Just be you. If you're a joker, joke. If you're a feeder, feed. If you're a hugger, hug. If you're a crier, cry. If you're an errand runner, run errands. Just show up and be real, because all of us know how to do that. Anyone who says, I don't know what to say, you just walk through the door and be real. The rest will unfold. So that too, I think is really important. And I'll just close with this. I find often with real suffering, it is impossible to move forward without staying put. We need to sit with it. We need to sit still and be comforted by others, because the surest way to move forward is to avoid, as Marianne said, ignoring it, dismissing it, or trying to rush through it. Sit with it, sit with it, sit with it. And when you can, you rise. And you will rise. We're all going through hell. We don't have to come out of hell empty-handed. And hopefully none of us will. I think that's pretty good for now.